The W210 E55 AMG. A relic of the less recent past and a testament to Mercedes-Benz engineering and a rolling checklist of potential headaches. If you've ever looked at one of these beauties and thought, should I sink a small fortune into restoring it, or any other car for that matter, well, you're in the right place. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you might just have your answer. Hey everyone, OJ Lopez here from Fluid MotorUnion, a shop just outside of Chicago that has seen quite an array of vehicles in our 16 years of fixing and modifying. Today, we're taking a stab at explaining a topic many of you have been asking about. Is it worth doing a full mechanical restoration on your beloved vehicle? But before we get started, click that like button and tell us what you think your project is going to cost to restore in the comments, and we can tell you how delusional you are. But all joking aside, take your pocket lights off the charger because we're about to find out. First things first, what even is a full mechanical restoration? Well, what it's not is fixing things as they fail or getting what's broke running again after long periods of sitting. Simply put, it's a project where the intention is restoring or updating a vehicle at or above its original intended functionality from the factory. So if you walk into a shop like ours and say, I want to get this thing in perfect condition, or I want to do a mechanical restoration, this is what your shop is thinking. Before you put the money and effort into a restoration, you need a good candidate. And what defines a good candidate? Well, I have a question I ask my customers to ponder before going down that route that I think will help all of you get an idea on the cost. Look up the book value or current going rate of the vehicle in question. In pristine condition, would you be willing to spend at least the market price, but up to the price of a modern model equivalent, or the adjusted for inflation original MSRP in your attempt at restoring it to that level? This E55 AMG, for instance, checking bring a trailer in the most recent sales for uber low mileage vehicles are in the ballpark of about $40,000. And the latest E63 is going for $110,000. Now you ask yourself, would I be willing to spend between 40 and 110 if this W210 was for sale as new today? If the answer is no, then your best bet is to keep fixing it as it breaks. You need to ask yourself, is this car worth saving? Do you have a personal attachment to it? Are you prepared to invest the time and money it will take to bring it back to its former glory? Because if you're not emotionally attached, this might not be the best investment. Sure, you can do little projects here and there, but starting the process of a mechanical restoration might not be in your project's future. Sounds expensive? It is. Every restoration project starts off with an intended budget, but unforeseen costs almost inevitably end up in price creep. We're a shop, and over the years, we've done loads of these projects, and the one constant is that nothing is predictable. We really try to be transparent and upfront, which is why I'm telling you that budget on these projects always expands. We've seen it time and time again. So if your goal is like it was off the showroom floor, you need to be realistically prepared. If you find a shop that the price is almost too good to be true, well, they probably underestimated it. And once you're there and your car's in pieces, you'll wonder if those higher quotes were from someone with more experience, but now you're trapped. So it's best to shoot high here, budget that amount out, and if you get it for under, great. But use these numbers to form your expectations. All right, so now that you've got an idea of where the project's budget could potentially run, what we need to do now is to look and see if we can pick a car with issues that could be under that price range. It's not easy, but let's go over the big stuff using a car that's in for exactly this. A 1999 W210 Mercedes-Benz E55 AMG. Let's start off with the most notorious issue, rust. These things rust if you breathe on them. The lower door frames are the most telltale sign, But these things oxidize anywhere water can sit around. The windshield, sunroof, fenders, the doors, the trunk. Fixing these with traditional bodywork is a monumental undertaking, so it's better if you just avoid the rust altogether. To keep a clean car like this from getting worse, we check the front and rear rocker panels and clean out the rubber drain holes to prevent future issues. So now that we moved inside, the interior build quality of the W210 is generally pretty great, but watch out for the steering column coming loose and the sunroof rattling noises. Another common issue is the alarm siren. Its internal battery corrodes and can cause a battery drain and other weird malfunctions. But welcome to old car ownership, where character means fixing things that shouldn't have broken in the first place. Now onto the suspension and brakes. The W2 suspension is really comfortable, but can be worn out. So make sure you check the spring perches and the lower control arm ball joints for wear. Estate versions come with hydraulic self-leveling suspension, which can be great, but can leak. So inspect those hydraulic units properly. Nothing says fun like dealing with hydraulic fluid leaks on a Saturday afternoon. Keeping your engine running smoothly is crucial. Start by checking for dry rotted vacuum hoses and other pesky vacuum leaks. The breather hoses and nipples on either side of the valve covers are notorious for breaking. A common fix is to drill and tap and install a brass fitting. The joys of engineering. But while we're on valve covers, oil leaks are another common thing with older vehicles, and the W210 is no exception. Check the rear main, the front main, the timing cover, the oil pan, oil filter housing, and the valve covers for leaks. Don't forget the power steering reservoir seal and the lines as well. Keep in mind that this E55 has nearly 126,000 miles on it, so lower mileage cars might be fine with their original parts. I like to run a bottle of injector cleaner every 10 or so fuel fill-ups to prevent sticky injectors, but we'll probably be cleaning these injectors as they can cause serious problems down the road. And like all Mercedes of this era, please get your crank position sensor replaced if you don't know if it's done or not. It's about $50 or so and can save you an intermittent no-start headache down the road, especially considering how straightforward they are to replace. Replacing often failed engine mounts is likely one of the most common problems for rough engine idle. I recommend replacing with OEM grade or even stronger than OEM, an upgraded version, as the cheap ones simply don't last. All considered changing the transmission mount at the same time, it's just smart. All right, so what am I doing here? Now, anytime we have a full mechanical restoration where the customer's spending some big bucks trying to get their car tip-top shape, we're gonna go in and try to make things look better than how they were before we got there. And a good way to do that is to clean and get the valve covers looking really nice, so that way when you spend all this money and you pop your engine, you're immediately greeted with something that you know was taken care of, that looks a little nicer, and just generally leaves you feeling a little bit better about the work that was done. We've got some red inside of the valve cover. If you remember, we've done a video short way back when, kind of talking about this. I've used it a bunch in the past 15 years, and what it is, it's red insulating varnish. Now, this is the stuff that's typically found inside of a alternator on the windings to keep moisture, to keep chemicals, to keep the windings from touching each other, to keep things from corroding on top of them, some of the dust from the engine, some of the dust from the bearing inside of the alternator. It does a really good job at being heat resistant and keeping stuff out. Why is it inside the engine? Well, when you put it on a surface and it's very cleaned off, it actually has a oil shedding attribute that allows oil not to stick inside of it. So why is that important? Well, as the valve covers get older, cast aluminum is actually porous. And those multiple heat cycles of the engine going in and out, hot to cold over the years, will create little pits and little holes all over. Now those holes, for the most part, tend not to open up, but what you can have over years is that some of those pits will open up and create a situation where it starts to sweat oil, wick oil, and might be a very minute amount, but it can still happen. So we get a twofold by treating this inside. This is also known as glyptol if you look it up. We get a sealing effect from putting this over, getting a nice thick coat, but the big issue, and a lot of people who want to tell me that this is going to flake off into the engine, you have to prep these things. You have to be ultra clean. We chemically treat these first, and then we go in and we blast and rough up the surface. We've got our AquaHone system, so we were able to go in there and get this really, really clean beforehand. And then we have to go slowly with multiple coats. It'll probably end up being 8 or 9 coats when it's all said and done. It has to get on there thick enough that it's not going to peel, enough time in between coats, and then we got to bake it on afterwards. So this is a process, and it takes a bit of time. And does it really make a bigger difference of having the oil not stick to the top? Well, at least when you pull the engine apart again, you don't see that varnishing that was originally on here that sticks on here. It tends to sludge up a little less. The oil remains in the pan instead of wicking off the camshaft, sticking to the top here and getting hit with the heat, sticking to there, or just having oil kind of sit on the surface. That's oil that's not in your pan. So minutely, it helps, but that being said, I know it's going to seal a little bit better, keep these old valve covers working good, sealed up, keep them like new, and when I'm all said and done, this thing's going to look a lot nicer too. But we've got to start with the inside before I can get to the outside. Now, if you don't know the history, servicing the transmission might be a good idea. A quality fluid, filter, 13-pin adapter, and pan seals are less than 150 in parts and can prevent future problems. Be careful when you flush at a high mileage vehicle. Be prepared monetarily to fix the transmission if it acts up afterwards. It's a restoration after all, and if flushing it out sped up its death, it was gonna die anyway. And while you're under the car, inspect the coolant hoses and fan pulley for excessive play to avoid a failing water pump. Because who loves the smell of coolant in the morning? No one. All right, so I've got the inspection, the digital inspection that we do here, and I'm going to go over it with you guys real quick. Anytime a customer says they want to make this thing perfect, this is what we're going to be looking for. So you can read all this stuff that he's looking to get done. And like I said, this thing was in pretty decently good condition, 126,000 miles, and we've got some faults in the evaporative system, which is for your emissions, reburning the fuel into the engine. Could be gas cap, could be purge valve. We're going to get into that later. He supplied us with AC heater core and evaporator. We're not sure if that's a problem yet, but he must know something that we haven't quite figured out getting this thing running, so we're going to diagnose into that, give him a quote on whether we feel it. We're recommending an alignment, but we're going to do that after we get into some of this drive stuff for the suspension. We did notice that the idler pulley, the plastic guard here had broken off, so this belt could slip off. We're recommending replacement of basically everything there. Coolant wasn't in great condition. Of course, we're going to want to flush that. Same thing with the brake fluid. This is all basically normal maintenance stuff because this car is in really decent condition. That air filter, yeah, it's dirty, but I've seen dirtier, dustier cars in Texas. Brakes, the brake pads are pretty low. The one thing to note is if you've got an edge on your brake rotor, that can create a noise if you do a pad slap. Also, this is probably evident that the rotors probably have some sort of uneven feeling in them, so it's good if especially you're trying to get a car to feel new. Probably going to do brakes all around just to give him the most out of it. And this is where we get into the suspension. A lot of stuff just wasn't quite right. loose ball joints. The components appear original, so there's actually kits out there that sell both complete front and rear, basically everything, control arm setups that you can go ahead and put on these cars. And, typically that's not something we just shotgun to a customer, but when you see where you get the prices of these kits through, where it comes with all of these components, it's really going to offer the most difference to the customer when you replace all that stuff at once and do a proper alignment. And, it's just probably the smart way to go if you're looking to update it. But if we were just looking to get rid of something that they were feeling, we'd try to, singularly find what the component issue was. This is kind of interesting. The exhaust system had a little bit of rust on it, which isn't cause for concern, especially considering this is a Texas car. But the customer, being that he's at FMU, is looking into us doing a full exhaust for him, which he's very excited about getting it done. We've made some great sounds on these V8s. Done a lot of them over the years, so we're kind of stoked about doing it. Super common problem. I talked about it in the video. The motor mounts, the trans mounts. Look at this one, starting to leak out here. So as the engine's rocking around, a little bit squeezes out depending on if it's rocking, moving, shifting around. And over time, you can kind of see that. This side isn't so bad, but you definitely want to replace them in pairs because they go out without any, outside influence. They're just problematic on their own. Valve cover leaks, you can kind of see up here where it's starting to get on the coil wires. You can see it on the exhaust manifold here. So this one isn't too bad, but bad enough where we're recommending it. And as you guys can see, anytime I do these valve covers, especially on these vehicles, we give the option for refinishing them, and you probably saw that process a little bit earlier. A lot of little fluid leaks, including the power steering. That's going to give us reason to go ahead and flush that. Now the transmission and differential service, got to be really careful anytime you're doing transmission flushes, as I touched on. If there's a lot of grit and buildup in the transmission from it wearing, if you go ahead and flush all that out, that could cause the transmission to very quickly die. But that being said, if you flushed it out, it already had the problem, you just exposed it. So if you're going down that route, you probably want to have a little bit set aside for doing a transmission. Undershield clips missing some hardware, and basically, as I said before, this car is super clean. It's super good candidate for getting a mechanical restoration. We sent this to the customer. We went over it with him. We're going to get him a price quote, and we're going to go over the things that he wants to do above and beyond what we're recommending. And we're going to try to figure that out for him and see if this is worth it for him to do. So, Robert, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fine, man. How are you today?
So, as you know, we've been going back and forth, letting you know some information on your vehicle. And anytime we get somebody from a long ways away, it kind of raises the bar for us on expectation. There's definitely a higher level of care and, just pressure on us to do a really good job for you. First off, why did you send the vehicle to us? What were your thoughts behind that?
Well, I'm a retired master Benz tech, and the reason I decided to send it to you is because my daughter, I recently lost my wife, and my daughter, I was thinking about selling the car, and my daughter reached out. She said, "No, Dad, I don't want to sell the car. I need to have a piece of you and Mom." And that was my wife's first vehicle. My wife was a motorcyclist. It took me forever and a day to get her off the bikes into a car. And so I finally got her in a car, and then she loved it once I got her in there. I told her one day, "I'm going to get you one of those cars." And she just said, "Oh, whatever." So I finally got her one. And, she kept it. And that car has a name. He's a he. His name is Ace. And I asked her, I said, "Why do you call the car Ace?" And she said, I call it Ace because it's ace in the hole. Because she's driven this car all over the place. It's never let her down. The only problem she ever had out that car, somebody forced her off the road. And she had this low profile, these low profile tires.
Absolutely,
It
yep.
knocked the tire off the rim and the car, and the tire went flat. But other than that, she's never had a problem with that car. Another reason I looked at you is because I follow Alex on legit street cars, and he would always he get into something. He said, I have a great shop, but it's things that I can't do, and OJ has this and that. I looked around. I wasn't just looking at your shop. I looked at a lot of people. I looked at California. I looked at some other people in the Midwest, and I just said no. I'm thinking more about Alex, because Alex and I are kind of kindred spirits. He's a master Benz tech, and I know what he's going through with that CL that he's working on.
Yep.
So he would always bring calls to you, and then I'm looking at you do these custom exhausts and stuff, and that's a pet peeve of mine, is exhaust work, because I can't do it, but I love to see other people do it like you, and you got a third sense about things. You're not going to let it go. You're not going to let a drone go. And people that's not in the business don't understand what that stuff means. They think you just put loud pipes on. No, it's not that. A lot goes into that.
I'm glad you noticed that, because when I set up an exhaust system for a customer, it's just kind of talking the way we're talking now. I get to feel for what the customer's looking
Right.
for, and I can tell somebody that, they're looking to be the most outgoing guy when they pull up at a Cars and Coffee versus the guy that still wants to start it up in his neighborhood and not make his neighbors mad, and he
Right.
wants a refined sound. There's big differences between those, and I've got
Between the two, right.
and I've got customers all in between though. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to match what the customer's looking for, not just
Of course.
not just whatever we throw on there. Last question I got for you. This thing's all wrapped up. Can you describe what that is, in the sense of like you said, I want to be able to take it to San Antonio. I want my daughter to be able to drive it. Just give me a few descriptive words of like what you envision this car being when it's all said and done.
I'm seeing this car as if my wife is still in this car. And I just wanted to be around because I'm 61, and hopefully I get to be 101, but you don't know. I want to be able to, if something happens to me, I can get it car to my daughter, and she can have another 20, 30 years with it. And maybe, who knows, like that curve you talking about, it'll take off, and the thing is actually worth a lot more. But to me, like I told your mom when I started this deal, it doesn't make financial sense, and that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it for a whole nother reason, and you know what that is.
Absolutely.
I just want to be able to pass it down the line.
And like I said, anytime we get a customer like that, because believe it or not, it's happening more often than not lately. But I'm not going to get a big head about it. If someone's like, hey, there's 1,000 miles between me and this guy, and I'm still sending my stuff to him, like,
Right.
that's a big deal to me, man. Like, that's why I started this business, and I'm not going to let you down. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me about this thing. I know I'm not going to let you down.
Right.
I don't always get everything right the first time, but we got a pretty good track record of eventually getting it right. So, but I'm not worried about that. I got a pretty good feel for you, and I think we're going to nail this, man. And, like I said, I'm super excited about the project. I appreciate you talking to me today. And I look forward, we'll keep you updated, but I look forward to where we're going with this thing. So we won't let you or your wife down. Promise you that.
I appreciate it, man. And my daughter's really excited about it as well. I probably won't get the damn keys back, but that's
Yeah, be careful. She'll take it and you won't get it back.
So is it worth it to do a full mechanical restoration on a W210 E55 AMG, or any car for that matter? It can be a long and expensive process, and while the money you put in will protect the value of the car in the long run, it might never be worth what you put in financially. But if you love the car and want to keep it on the road for years to come, then it's absolutely worth it. Remember to ask yourself these key questions. Do I have a good candidate for restoration? How much am I willing to spend? Do I have the skills to do the work myself? And how long do I plan to keep this car? Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful,
give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave comments and questions below. Until next time, keep those engines running smooth.